I discovered a secret technique that makes dried hot pepper powder way more flavorful. Over the years, we've dried our own peppers for homemade cayenne powder and paprika, but from now on, we'll be doing things differently. In this video, I'll share what we've learned over the years using different methods, along with a full walkthrough of our new preferred technique. Before I get into it, if you want to watch us use things like this in the kitchen, we have a new channel, Pepper Geek Eats. I'll leave a link to it down below. You can watch us make delicious, spicy things like hot sauce or pickled peppers. Check it out if you're interested. To start off, let's talk a little bit about store-bought dried peppers. This here is a dried ancho chili, also known as a poblano. This is just a ripe poblano that's been sun-dried. The result, as you can see, is almost a jet black colored pepper with lots of wrinkles. It's crushed down, but the aroma on this thing is incredible. It smells almost like a raisin. Some people also pick up on notes of chocolate. It's very deep and earthy, a little bit smoky. Definitely not aromas you would pick up on a fresh chili. This here is a pasilla chili, another variety that you can pick up at the store. It also has those raisin-like aromas. So what exactly is happening to result in these deep flavors? Well, the secret lies in how they're dried. These are both sun-dried in arid climates, so they can actually be dried outdoors underneath the sun. Unfortunately for us here in New England, this is not possible because it's just too humid to safely dehydrate our peppers without risking mold. So if you're in a similar situation to us and you can't air dry your peppers, then I want to talk about some things you can do at home to get super flavorful dried peppers. First is the type of chili that you'll be dehydrating. Fully ripe peppers are almost always preferred. They'll have a much more complex flavor profile to begin with. There'll be more sugars and compounds in those chilies that will result in a more flavorful dried product. Thin-walled varieties are also a much better option than thick-walled peppers. If you ever tried dehydrating a bell pepper, you know it takes a very long time. So poblanos would be on the thickest side that I would recommend. And then something like a hatch chili or just a red chili pepper, cayennes of course, are all great options for drying. So once you have your fresh chilies to dehydrate, it's time to think about the technique. And there are so many different options here. Air drying is definitely a good one, again, if you live in a climate where that's possible. But if not, you'll likely have to use a dehydrator or an oven. There are some other options out there like a curing cabinet, using a small dehumidifier in an air temperature chamber. But for the most part, I'll be talking about using a food dehydrator. So the first thing to consider here is how long after harvesting should you start dehydrating? And pretty much without fail, our best flavors have always come from using peppers that were freshly harvested, right off the plant and right into the dehydrator. Peppers have the most flavor that they'll have right when they reach peak ripeness. Now we finally get to the most important factor that I recently did a lot more testing on, and that is temperature. Now, since I said air drying results in a very complex flavor, you might think that a low and slow dehydrator temperature would be optimal. But what I found recently in my testing is that's just not true. This batch of cayenne peppers was dried at around 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit for around 2 or 3 days. It takes a lot longer to dehydrate at that low temperature. And as you can see, the color of this pepper powder is the most vibrant of all. So it lost very little in the way of color, but when it comes to aroma and flavor, it's just not nearly as flavorful as some of the other options. This here is what we've done over the past few years. We've dehydrated around 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which gives us about a 24-hour drying time for something like cayenne peppers. It's not too long, but you also don't lose too much in the way of color, and the flavor is sort of as expected. It's fresh, but it's not super fruity or sweet or deep like some of the other dried chilies that we have here. Finally, I went against the common advice and dehydrated some cayenne peppers at a much higher temperature, around 140 or 145 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, we definitely lost some color. You can see it's much more pale, and at first glance, this might be your last choice out of all of these pepper powders. However, the aroma on this cayenne powder is out of this world, and I think I know what might be happening. Now, I'm definitely not a biochemist. I don't truly know what's happening and what is making the difference here. All I can tell you is that this is fruity and fresh and sweet. It smells unbelievable on its own, and all it is dried peppers. And my theory is that this is more of a toasting process rather than just dehydration. So if you like to cook at home, you've likely come across some recipes where they tell you to toast some of the whole spices or even things like almonds to release some of those flavors and make it a much more punchy and flavorful dish. I think at 145 degrees Fahrenheit, these cayenne peppers actually toasted slightly and cooked, and that's also probably why the color has changed a bit as well. While I definitely prefer the bright red color of this batch, and the flavor and aroma are definitely not bad, I'm much more intrigued by what's going on here, and I recommend that you try it as well. I think higher heat for a shorter period of time is definitely the way to go if you're using a dehydrator, and especially if you're making your own paprika. I think this would be amazing for sweet paprika powder. It's got that fruity, almost raisin-like aroma to it that you definitely want to have when you're adding it to things like soups and stews, chilies. It's going to add a lot of flavor and body to your meals rather than just spice. The last thing to consider with your dehydrated peppers is whether to grind them right away or let them sit for a little while before grinding. Now, if you plan on using them whole, maybe putting whole dried chilies into your hot sauces or chilies or soups, then you could just leave them whole until you're ready to use them. In fact, that's the best way to get the maximum flavor out of your dried chilies. If you grind them, over time that flavor will degrade quicker if they're pre-ground. But what I found is that leaving them at room temperature in a brown paper bag for a week or two helps to equalize the moisture content in those peppers. They become slightly bendable after that period of time, and then you can grind them into a nice balanced pepper powder. I think that step is optional. You certainly could just go right from dehydration to grinding. It's going to save you a lot of time if you don't bother with that last step, and you'll still have a really flavorful powder. So our new process for making homemade chili powder is really simple. Harvest ripe peppers off of the plant, remove the seeds, and place the peppers on a dehydrator tray. Dehydrate at about 145 degrees for 12 to 18 hours, depending on the thickness of the peppers. Then allow them to sit at room temperature for about a week for moisture levels to equalize, then grind them into a powder. So now just for fun, I'm gonna taste test these different pepper powders. I'm gonna try them on a cracker with some cream cheese because it's kind of hard to taste test powder on its own. First, I'll try our classic method, 125 degrees for about a day or so. Then I'll try the low and slow powder, which I recently made at around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I'll try the high temperature cayenne powder, 145 degrees Fahrenheit. And then just for fun, and because I'm a little bit hungry, I'll try all three of them on one. All right, so starting with our classic technique here. So that's not doing too much in the way of flavor. It's definitely adding a slow burn that's coming up. It's not overwhelming at all, but it's just adding that nice warmth and a touch of flavor, a little smokiness that cayenne pepper brings. All right, next, low and slow. It's definitely the most vibrant here. It looks beautiful, and it does have a pretty nice fresh aroma to it. Let's give it a try. These are big bites. Very similar to the first. I really don't detect much difference here. The only difference is this took about 2.5 or 3 days to dehydrate. So quite a time commitment, beautiful color, but flavor definitely lacking. Finally, high temp, low dry time. Let's try it. I could tell just based on the aroma that this was going to be more flavorful, and it absolutely is. It's actually more mellow, still a nice warming peppery flavor, but it's got more of a fruity note to it that I've just never tasted in my own homemade cayenne powder. Really delicious. It's gonna come down to your personal preference though. There's nothing wrong with these pepper powders. This has just got something totally new and unique that I'm really excited to play with in the kitchen. All right, last one, all three. I think I know this is gonna be good. Good. So what'd you think? Have you done any of your own experimenting with dehydrating peppers? We'd love to learn more from you in the comments down below. We're always keeping an open mind, and I'd love to try a different technique, maybe even higher temperature, or maybe there's some way that we can try air drying here in New England. Please let us know down below. And if you haven't yet, check out our new channel, Pepper Geek Eats, where we're putting things like this to use in the kitchen, making spicy and delicious recipes. Thanks for watching Pepper Geek, and I'll see you next time.